Did you know that something as simple as a nasal spray could improve your sleep, boost recovery, and even enhance your workouts? Stick around, this could change your health game. In this episode, we dive into the incredible benefits of xylitol and Xlear nasal spray, Xlear with an X, a natural solution for better breathing, sinus health, and overall wellness. Whether you struggle with allergies, congestion, or even poor sleep, this game-changing tool can help you breathe easier, recover faster, and feel better daily. Stay tuned as I interview my next guest, Nathan Jones from Xlear. How's it going? This is Brad Williams with Over 40 Fitness Hacks Podcast, the podcast where I help you, being over 40, to fight the aging process without giving up your social life. In this episode, I want to talk about this new school program I just built. It's free for the first 100 members. What School is, SKOOL, is a program that is a classroom-based tutorial website tied in with something very similar to a Facebook group, but on steroids. This social media platform has blown up since last January, and I just got in and finished my classroom. What it is I'm taking my Over 40 Fitness Hacks podcast and just putting it into this now community-based driven platform so I can provide tutorials on everything I know. Put the link to this in my show notes. Thanks for listening, and hopefully I'll see you inside. So Nate, I'd just like to thank you for coming on my show. I'd like to pick your brain on all these new products out there, not only for athletes, but just the overall over 40 crowd, which is my audience, and how we can get healthier with just fitness, general wellness. I'm sure some of your products help with the runners out there, but how did you get into what you're doing before you even started Xlear with an X? My audience, that's how we spell company. And just what are the benefits of xylitol? I've heard that in all different types of natural food products as a flavoring, but using it as a nasal irrigator, that's a new one. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So I'll let you take it away.
Well, I got into it because my dad is a physician. In 1998, my dad actually started mixing up a nasal spray with the sugar in it to use on babies that were having recurrent ear infections. And he did this because he went and was trying to find a way to prevent ear infections in babies, but what kept coming up was dental research. And for those people that don't know, xylitol is a sugar. It's a sweetener. It looks like sugar. It tastes like sugar. It has a glycemic index of under 10. And so it's a great sweetener if you're trying to cut carbs. It's not as good as erythritol. I think erythritol is a great sweetener also. What xylitol does have going for it is they've known since the late 60s that xylitol helps prevent tooth decay. And it does it in different ways. And I'll go into it for 1 minute and then we'll go back on topic. But what it does is it actually gets rid of the strep mutans bacteria in your mouth that create the acid. Everybody else, they talked about fluoride. Fluoride is just making your enamels stronger, more resistant to the acid, but it's not doing anything to actually treat the bacterial infection. And xylitol, again, this isn't new. There's thousands of studies out there showing it. It actually gets rid of the strep mutans bacteria in your mouth. It changes the microbiome in your mouth away from the acid-creating bacteria. So my dad was reading these studies, and in the footnotes, what they also found out and recorded was that the kids that were using the xylitol gum in these studies, not only were they not getting tooth decay, but they were getting 42% fewer ear infections, respiratory infections. And there was a paper that came out in August and October of 1998 in the Journal of Antimicrobial Chemotherapy, where they pointed out that what was going on is that xylitol is binding up on these receptor sites and blocking the ability of these bacteria to adhere to the tissue. My dad said, well, if it works by doing that, we should be putting it in their nose because that's where the ear infection starts. And he started using it. And I quit my day job a year later to start the company. I used to do underwater welding, construction out on the oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico. I quit that and came and started this company. And I've been doing this now for 25 years.
Wow.
So how does it help athletes?
Yeah.
Well, there's two ways that it helps athletes. Okay. One of them is, if you're sick, you're not training. Okay. Or you're not training as effectively. And so one of the things that we know is that by washing out all these bacteria and viruses out of your upper airway, you're not going to get sick as often. Again, it's not a drug. It's a hygiene tool. Just like washing your hands, brushing your teeth, you use it once in the morning, once at night, cleans all the bacteria and the viruses out of your nose. Actually, I probably shouldn't say all, but it does clean these pathogens out of your airway. But the other thing that it does is you're down in San Diego. There's a group of doctors down there in San Diego, but it's a Dr. Stephen Olmos at the Sleep Center. And they actually did a study where they used our nasal spray and they had people come in. They measured their airway volume using ultrasound. And then they had them use a bottle, squirt their nose with Xlear. And within 3 minutes, their airway volume improved 20%.
Wow.
If you're an athlete or you're trying to work out, being able to improve the airway volume is a big bonus.
So these people that they were testing this on, were these people that were having obstructions like sinus issues or allergies like I currently have right now, or just normal people? And then they tested the normal people, how much more these airways opened up?
Well, they were testing a whole bunch of people. And I'm sure that they had a bunch of both of those types of people in there. I mean, this was one that was done, the sleep center, they have clinics all over the world. They have them in Australia, they have them in South Africa, they have them in Dubai. And they did that at a whole bunch of their centers with a large number of their patients. But if they're going into the sleep center, it doesn't mean they have allergies. It just means they have sleep apnea.
Yeah. So, okay. So for this testing, it was basically you take the product, then they're measuring how well they're sleeping and breathing. Thus, they reported their findings on just that.
Well, no, hey, I forgot to finish. Sorry. 3 minutes after they squirted it up their nose, they used ultrasound and remeasured it.
Mm-hmm.
And so within 3 minutes, their airway volume had improved by 20%. There is a paper that came out of, it's a Dr. Xylitol Nasal, but he is out of Georgetown, but he actually had a paper where he showed that if you use our nasal spray as compared to a saline over the course of 3 weeks, once in the morning, once at night, it improves your airway volume by 36%.
Wow.
And the reason why is because our nasal spray is hyperosmotic, and xylitol causes it to be hyperosmotic. And so osmotically, it pulls fluid out of the inflamed tissues in your upper airway.
So what is the purpose of like saline solutions? Just to try to clear debris and that's it? Nothing else that it can do?
Yeah. I mean, so the saline is what has traditionally been used,
Yeah.
and people still use it. And there's a time and a place for it. I use an analogy. I say sometimes you come in from outside and you just rinse your hands in a faucet. That's like using saline. Sometimes you want to use soap. That's like using xylitol.
Okay.
Xylitol works just like soap. It works as almost a surfactant. It's not really a surfactant, but it does the same thing to the bacteria and the viruses. And so it allows your body to clean them away more efficiently.
Wow. Just xylitol in general, good for our oral hygiene. I'm assuming, does it help alkalize the mouth? Because that's what what fluoride is doing, is making it more acidic and causing all these problems. So going more alkaline, and just like you hear all the time in holistic wellness, it all starts with the mouth. That's the first entry
That's
point
actually true. And not only is it true, but most people don't understand this, but people that are athletic, people that work out, usually have poorer oral hygiene and more cavities than people that don't. And they did a paper, and if you go to, I think it's on our webpage, I think there's a link to it. But when they had the Olympics in London, they had a whole paper that came out in the dental literature about this. And the reason is that when people are out there running and they're competing in sports, a lot of them are breathing through their mouth, which dries it out, which is going to lower the pH and make it more acidic. And then they're also eating all the little carbohydrates, like goo packs and all of this, which is then feeding the bacteria that are making it acidic.
Wow. Okay.
So if you're utilizing xylitol or erythritol, you're actually going to get rid of that bacteria.
So one, it helps the oral hygiene that we just talked about. Two, opens up our airways and will help pull in more oxygen, 30% more than if you hadn't used it. And then thus, another product of all this is because you have all this openness, not just for athletics and working out, better sleep, which is for my over 40 crowd, is huge.
Well, a lot of the organizations that are practicing in sleep medicine or myofunctional therapy, most of them utilize our nasal spray as a first line product.
Wow.
I mean, that sleep center group, their clinics all over the world order products from us. I mean, we've got our products into Australia, Dubai, a lot of these countries, because the people going to those clinics keep asking for it. And so we end up getting it into those countries.
So as far as allergies, there's nothing within your product that helps with that. That's a totally different phenomenon that with histamine response.
Well, it's a totally different phenomenon. But so when I started the company back in 2000, the only thing we were talking about was childhood and ear infections and bacterial adhesion, because that's all we knew about. But the very first time we went to go make a product line extension, we went out and surveyed a bunch of our customers, and the vast majority of them were people that were using it for allergies. And we sat down with a bunch of EN doctors and tried to figure out why that was. And what we figured out was happening is when you use xylitol, like I mentioned, it pulls water into the mucus, but it also speeds up the mucociliary clearance cycle. So if you're breathing in dander, pollen, whatever, your body is going to make more snot, more mucus. But this is actually going to speed that cleansing mechanism up. And so you're not going to have to use your antihistamines, your decongestants as much, because your body's washing more of it away more efficiently.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. As far as products that Xlear with an X your company has, is it just literally a nasal spray, or you would think that you would put this kind of thing in like a toothpaste too? How come we doing that?
We have toothpaste. If you go into a natural product store, almost all of the gum is going to be made with xylitol. Most of the toothpaste has xylitol. Most of the mouthwashes is also going to have. We actually have a brand of gum and mints toothpaste that's probably oral care line.
Okay.
So we have that. It's a different name because no one wants to put Crest or toothpaste up their nose. So
yeah.
And no one wants to brush their teeth with a nasal spray. 5 years ago, we did a little market research and it was no. So it's two different brands. But yeah, you can buy it. And we recommend that especially athletes and people that are trying to stay healthy, use xylitol. Just get the stuff with your toothpaste, mouthwash, and chew. If you're going to buy gum or mints, make sure it's stuff with xylitol. Hopefully it's our brand. There's other brands out there, but just make sure it's 100% xylitol. And there's even some in the mass market, like at the gas station, that have xylitol in them. They have a whole bunch of other artificial sweeteners and stuff, but they do have xylitol if you don't care about the aspartame and the sucralose.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. How safe is xylitol? 'Cause you hear in the media that aspartame horrible, sucralose horrible, and then it goes down to less where you get to stevia and xylitol and erythritol. And not only that, erythritol, I'm highly allergic to that. As soon as I put something down, an immediate IBS type reaction every single time. And I've read online, tons of people have it too. So obviously see if you're sensitive or not. But as far as safety and longevity, is there any issues with xylitol you think for taking this every day, or should we?
You know what was interesting is all those sweeteners that you just listed, you didn't list the one that's the worst for you.
Aspartame's not the worst?
No, sugar is.
Oh, cane sugar?
Yeah. Your regular 6-carbon sugar is more toxic for you than most of those other sugars that you just listed. I mean, it causes tooth decay. It feeds pathogenic bacteria in your mouth. It causes inflammation. I mean, and they've got all kinds of studies and data backing that up, but the media never talks about it.
Yeah. Well, even worse than that would be like high fructose corn syrup. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
But you know, you haven't seen that one in the media, and they've known high fructose corn syrup was bad for you even before they put it on the market. That's what's crazy. They did. You ever heard of a guy by the name of Otto Warburg? But he was a Jewish gay man living openly with his partner in Germany in the 1930s. He was doing research and he published these research studies. And the interesting thing is, again, I said he was Jewish, openly gay, living with his partner. The Nazis protected him all the way through the war because of the research he was doing.
Wow.
And so that tells you the value of it. Actually, his papers all stated that fructose was what was causing most of the cancers that we were seeing in our society.
Wow.
So that's not me saying it. It's from the 1930s.
Yeah. So going back to your product, this is something that you can take daily, no problem. You should take daily.
You should take it daily.
Yeah.
I mean, and the thing is that your body makes xylitol. Xylitol is in every plant. I mean, I don't want to say every, but it's in every plant, because what makes up humans and animals, we have cell membranes. In plants, it's cell walls. The cell walls are actually made up with polysaccharides, long-chain polysaccharides. And the xylitol is one of those long chains. So every plant matter has it. So if you eat plants, you're eating a lot of xylitol. About, I want to say 20% of a plum, the dry weight, take the water out, but about 20% of a plum is xylitol. For commercial purposes, they actually get it out of corn cobs, not the corn itself, but the corn cob. Next time you're eating corn on the cob, when you're done, break it in half and suck on it, and it's going to taste sweet, and that's xylitol.
Ah, very interesting. How about any other benefits from xylitol, as far as a lot of my over 40 audience cares about weight loss? I would assume, and if you can breathe better, get better oxygen in your body, I mean, that just speeds up the process. But is there any other types of good side effects from going on xylitol besides what we've talked about?
I mean, I use xylitol, but I use a blended 60% erythritol, 40% xylitol is what I use. When I use a sweetener. I think I have a 5-pound bag of sugar in my house. It's been there for 10 years because whenever I'm making anything, we use a blend of xylitol and erythritol. But as far as losing weight, I would, unless you have issues with it, I would actually recommend erythritol.
Wow.
Just because there's 0 glycemic index and 0 calories in erythritol. Erythritol is not quite as sweet as xylitol, which is why you blend it with xylitol.
Yeah.
But I think that's a better one. If your only goal is to lose weight, I would go with erythritol.
Yeah. So I imagine all the runners listening, your product is huge. If you're not going to take it every day, take it for your events, because when you're in that type of cardiovascular, using oxygen for energy and fat burning mode, this is a no brainer.
Well, then what they need to do, because we used to, are you familiar with what Ragnar is?
Yeah.
The Ragnar races? Yeah. We partnered with Ragnar for a number of years, and we would hand out the nasal spray and the gum and stuff. But the vast majority of people, they wouldn't use it while they were running and doing that. And the reason is, and it's logical, is, well, I don't know how my body's going to react to it. So I'm going to wait and I'm going to use it when I go home, and I'm going to use it for a couple of weeks. And if it helps me, then I'll use it the next time I run, which that's logical. So use it every day. But I mean, again, all of our products are hygiene products. They're not drugs. They're not medicine. They're hygiene products. You use them in your mouth to help keep your mouth clean, to get rid of the bacteria that cause tooth decay. You use them in your airway for the same reason. I mean, what can I say? They're great products. We've known for 25 years that it helps with bacterial pathogens. I mean, during COVID, we found out that we started looking at viruses, and we found out that it blocked a number of viruses also.
Wow.
I mean, there was a paper that came out of India during the Delta wave where they actually used a xylitol nasal spray, incredibly similar to ours, just in hospital workers, and it reduced transmission of COVID by about 62% above the salt water, which we already know that does a bunch also.
Yeah. Well, what about any other products that Xlear has, or is it just mainly your flagship is the nasal spray? Or I thought I looked at the site and there's like 3 different ones or something.
Yeah. So we have the one that's the Max. That was the one that we actually made for all the people with allergies
Okay.
years ago now, when we found out that most of our customers use it for allergies. And it just has capsaicin in it, which is a natural antihistamine. And the whole goal of it is to just try to use less pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
We're not anti-pharmaceutical. We believe there's a time and a place for them. We just think that our country, our culture, we hand out pharmaceuticals and drugs like they're candy, and that's not a good habit.
Nope.
And so you just use that one. And then we have another one called Rescue, which has eucalyptus, tea tree. But that one is if you start to feel like you're getting sick or something, you use that and it helps flush out more of the bacteria, more of the pathogens out of your upper airway faster.
Okay.
And then we have a rinse bottle, but we're not huge fans of it. But there is a time and a place for it. But it's like
The neti pot, just full clear.
yeah. Yeah. And the philosophy of that is opposing to what ours is, because when you use an irrigation bottle, you're actually flushing all your snot out.
Yeah.
You're cleaning that whole thing, and you need your mucus. That mucus is a protective layer and it's protecting the underlying tissues. You flush all that out. It takes 4 or 5 hours for your body to recreate that mucosal layer that's protective.
Yeah.
And so by flushing it all, if you use a nasal spray, it actually just hydrates it, moisturizes it. It doesn't flush it all out.
Yeah. No, I'm more about getting into healthy habits and routines to not have to go overboard and use like pharmaceutical drugs and all these different methods. But hey, I'm glad too when they're there, because when you need it,
When you need them.
emergency is emergency.
I agree.
Well, cool. Well, Nate, how can my audience get a hold of you, your products? Is it just all on X.com?
Well, if you want to find out more information about it, again, go to Xlear. It's xlear.com. And we have a drop-down menu at the top, and it talks about studies. If you have any questions about the studies, the data, how it blocks bacteria, how it works with any of these, just go there. I encourage people to go there and read the science behind it, because I want people to be educated about what they're doing and why they're doing it. But you can buy the Xlear products. You can buy everywhere: CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens, South Africa, UK, Saudi Arabia, Australia. I mean, you can buy those everywhere. But the spray product line, if you go into an actual retailer anywhere in the country and they haven't.
Okay. Yeah, no, what's cool is since doing this podcast, I've kind of really like getting people in the supplement world and all these different types of health and wellness products. Because it's one thing to read stuff in the magazines or watch stuff on TV and, okay, I think we trust CVS a little bit. Let's see what they got. Talking to other people about how it really works in the industry, and it's not completely regulated. Starting last year, I was like, I'm not taking or putting anything in my body until I talk to the founder, get to know their company, and then I'll switch out whatever I'm taking for that. So I've been doing that for now 2 years, and it's been crazy the difference between products.
I'm similar to you, except when I'm reading some of these things, what I usually do is I find out who wrote the article and who did the research, and I call them and talk to them.
Yeah. No, I don't want to go to that extent. So I'd rather talk to someone like you who did all the work. And then my thing is gauging someone and trustworthiness and all that, and then go from there. So that's great.
The last time I went to Australia, I went down there just so I could sit down and chat with this gentleman that did some research on how, this is actually crazy research, but it's how when you breathe stuff in, viruses, bacteria, it gets caught in your snot. You eat that. People don't want to think about this, but you eat about a cup and a half of snot a day. But interesting thing is that your body will actually sense. You have these things in your intestines in your body that they're called Payer's patches, and they actually sense the genetic material in these pathogens that have been incapacitated by your mucus, and they'll actually make antibodies for that. And so that's how you can have people I'll use COVID as an example, but that's how they would say, oh, I had asymptomatic COVID. Well, what do you mean asymptomatic? If it's asymptomatic, it's not a disease.
Yeah.
You're saying that it's asymptomatic COVID because you have antibodies. And so we can have antibodies to a lot of diseases and viruses that we never actually got sick from.
Because our body just processed them right out.
The body, we breathe it in, it gets trapped in our snot and mucus. We swallow that. These Payer's patches sense that, and they're making antibodies without us ever getting sick.
Yeah.
So, and when I tried to talk to him on the phone, it was very difficult. And because he was like 84 and he speaks like an Australian.
Yeah.
And so I flew down to Australia and sat down with him for 5 or 6 hours and just talked about his studies.
Wow. And then one last question for like children. What is the typical age that you would recommend using like the nasal? Just
the day they're born.
The day they'll actually sniff it up and not.
Well, even infants when they're born, do you have children?
Yeah, I have a 7-year-old. daughter?
Okay, when they're born, they'll start using saline drops in their nose. When my kids were born, I had them start using Xlear from the day they were born.
Yeah.
The same as you would use a saline. And the reason why is one of the things that I didn't mention is a lot of people use saline to hydrate their airway.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they're giving these babies. But when you use saline in your airway, you have a transport system that transports the salt into the tissue, and then the water follows it. That's how your body regulates how fluid your mucus
Yeah.
is through that system. So you can use a saline, but after about half an hour, 45 minutes, it's dried up again. And because all the water went into the tissue, you're creating a little bit of inflammation. When you use xylitol, it doesn't get absorbed. And so it stays in the mucus. And so it constantly osmotically pulls moisture out of that tissue, reducing that inflammation and also making your mucus more fluid. So it washes away faster.
Yeah. Does its job better. That makes sense.
So yeah, I mean, again, I told you early on, my dad actually invented it for infants.
Yeah.
That were too young to chew gum.
Wow. Excellent. Well, cool. Well, Nate, I just want to thank you again for coming on my show and educating us. And like I said, just one of my passions now is all the different products out there and speaking to the founders. My audience always knows that I'll put all the links you just said right into the show notes, but I encourage the audience to go on the website and look at some of these articles and the research.
One other thing, if anybody ever has a question about oral health, respiratory health, we're not doctors, but we have a lot of doctors that work with us, or about xylitol that they want answered, just shoot us an email. Just go to sales or customer service. I'm not sure what it is. You have a place on our website where you can go in and ask those questions, and we'll answer the question to the best of our knowledge. And if we don't know the answer, we'll find a physician or we'll find a researcher that does.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's just called good customer service too. I love it when you can easy little question and a quick answer back to get you going. So, well, I really appreciate you coming on, Nate, and definitely sold me. So I'll be trying your product, and also for my daughter who constantly has little ear infections as well. So,
well, thanks for having me.